Hey guys, so I'm going to work on the FroKnowPhoto Raw edit number 48. It's I'll show you, it's a shot of this little kid, little baby. I'm looking at it, I'm going to go pretty straightforward, just a nice baby portrait. I know that's usually not what goes well in the forums. Usually the ones that are a little wackier get selected just because they're different, but I'm going to stick with a pretty straightforward image for this kid. I think it's more about showing, you know, the beauty of the kid and, you know, something, say, the parents would like to see in a photograph. All right, well, I'm going to start off with, in Adobe Camera Raw, I open it up there. I'm going to enable the lens profile just to get rid of any vignetting or any barrel distortion or pin cushioning. Next thing I'm going to do, you know, I'm probably going to do a little bit of sharpening here, but I'm going to do most of my sharpening in Photoshop itself. So, not too much there. Next, I wonder how this was shot. I wonder if that was a window or a flash. Let's see. If I put it in daylight, well, that's interesting. It gets kind of blue in the background. What if I want flash? Ooh, it gets a little greenish. I think I'm going to go with daylight. Just, it's probably a window, I guess. Definitely going to probably crop this image. Man, I got something on my nose, but... okay, let me bring that in. I'm going to bring it in holding down Shift so that it brings it in as a smart object. I can always go back to my camera raw. Oh, it opened it up over here. Let's see. Sorry, it's my second monitor. Okay, so let's start by, let's see. You know, this painting back here is really distracting because it's kind of coming out of the top of his head. I don't like that. I'm probably going to get rid of this painting, I think, but I'm going to crop first. Let's start with a crop because I feel like we could totally crop this image. I'm going to show the baby here. Maybe give him a little headroom up there. And hold on. Okay, so I think I'm going to go about there in the top, and I guess I want to show a little bit of his neck so we get a sense of it. And then using my rule of thirds so he's not centered. I actually tend to like to go kind of way off. Get that eye right on that rule of thirds line. Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, I think that works. I think that's a nice image. I can always move it around. Let's see. Maybe it could be there. That's about right. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I definitely want to get rid of, especially now that I got that I cropped it, I definitely want to get rid of this painting back here. Because it's hard to tell what's going on, and it's just distracting. It's coming out of his head, even though it's nicely blown out, but I think we can just get rid of it. So the easiest way I find is to airbrush it. I like naming my layers. So I just select an airbrush, you know, I select my brush. I usually do a really low flow. I might actually go up higher than this one, and then just kind of select the color around it. And I am just going to paint it out real easily like this for now. And then I sometimes, what I usually do is I'll go into, you know, airbrush into the face, and then I'll come back and mask out anything that is kind of surrounding that overflow into his face. So I'm definitely going to get rid of these things up here too. You know, and this is like the easiest way of doing this. This is an easy technique. You don't really need to use cloning or anything like that when it's this simple of a background. You know, if it was a little more complicated background, like say those trees or something, it would be a lot harder. I mean, you would have to either use Clone Tool or, you know, some of the new tools in Photoshop like the Content Aware Fill and stuff. But something like this, you don't need to. Now, of course, I'm saying that I do have to airbrush. I do have to make a mask. And now is when I will go in here and see all this overflow. I'm just going to mask it out, and I just use my brush. I find it, it's kind of the way I like to work. I mean, I find I'm faster that way, and I'm pretty accurate. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. You can always, using masks, you can always go back and forth. You can, you know, add more, take away more. So this is looking pretty good. Let's see. Just make sure I don't have, I'll see this ear got a lot of overflow. So, you know, get rid of all that. Make sure there's none in his face. There's probably some here. There's a little yellow spot right there that we're probably going to get rid of in a little while. But let me finish doing this first. And once I get rid of all this overflow, it's over here. And I think that's going to be pretty good. So we effectively have gotten rid of that background distracting, and now we have him on just a very simple gray background. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look around and see if he's got any blemishes using my healing brush. Healing blemishes is what I like to call it. And then, you know, like just anything that I might see that needs to be filled. With babies, it's really not that big a deal because babies have such soft skin that you hardly ever have to remove anything. But, you know, just every once in a while you find like, even if you find like camera dust or whatever, you know, sensor dust, but, you know, a little bit like, I just noticed something that I'm going to definitely get rid of as soon as I finish just kind of looking at. And the great thing about the healing brush is that it doesn't take very long. You know, you just kind of paint where you want and it does its thing, you know. You know, I just noticed that I missed some of this overflow over here, so I'm going to go back to that layer and kind of clean it up. Okay, so now back to my healing brush. What I did notice that I was mentioning is in his nose, he has little, I don't know what that is. I guess it could be little, just things that we can clean out. Let's see, he's got a little scar, I think. And then, you know, let's just make sure we don't have anything in there. And I'm going to use a brush just to kind of finesse that out. Okay, just to simplify it a little bit, make sure that it's not too distracting. Okay, see there's a little white right here that I just kind of want to get rid of. Use my healing brush, see if that works. Yeah, that'll start it off, and then I can always come back with my just a regular airbrush and then just kind of clean it up a little bit. You know, and, I mean, looking at it this close, you can tell, but once you back out, you just don't want anything that's really distracting. Okay, next I think I'm going to do. I think I'm just going to pump up his highlights just a little bit first. Basically the way I do that is I'm going to make a layer called highlights. I'm going to put that layer on overlay, and then I'm going to use my brush, and using just a white, I just like to add a little bit of white kind of airbrush in the areas that I want highlighted. You know, it's just kind of by feel, you know. I've been doing this for a while, so I kind of know where to go and stuff. But you gotta be careful, you know. Like there, I think I went a little too far, so I'm just gonna mask out a little bit. Just adding a little bit of highlights to make it look like he's a little wet and his lips are a little wet. And then what I can do is definitely highlights in his eyes. Just punch those up because we want those. Those are gonna be really bright. Next thing I want to do is I had talked about this little yellow spot that he has, so I'm gonna add a little. I'm gonna add what I call a makeup layer. I call it a makeup layer because that's kind of what it is. It's just basically, again, I take my airbrush in a really low flow, which is at 5%, kind of a big brush, and then I just select the color around it, and I'm just gonna add a little bit of that color right over that yellow just to finesse it, you know, just to get rid of that yellow mark. And if you look at back at the on and off, you know, you just gotta be careful when you do this stuff, because when you add highlights or when you add paint to darks and darks to lights, you will actually change the shape of their head. See how it's dark right here? If I were to add white over here, the shape of his head would look different. So you just gotta be careful about that stuff. Next thing I want to do is, now that I have that, I want to take all the layers, I'm gonna copy them and flatten them all together by using Command E. You know, you kind of take all the layers that I had selected and make it into one layer, and then I'm gonna copy that, I'm gonna make that my sharpen layer. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take that, I'm gonna use the filter, other, high pass, and 2% looks about right, but and once you do this, if you put it on overlay, you'll see that it really does kind of sharpen him up. I don't want everything sharpened, because if you look closely, it's sharpening all this like noise in the background and some of his skin that you don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mask, and I'm going to fill the entire mask with black. So right now, entire mask with black. So right now, this layer is not doing anything. Dogs are playing in the background. It's pretty funny. And then I'm going to take my brush again, using white paint. I'm going to paint out where I want the mask to actually work. So I want the eyes to be really sharp. So I'm definitely going to add some white in there. I like lips that are sharp. And I think with him, maybe a little bit of his hair just to define his hair. Guys, calm down. Come on. Yeah, just to define his hair a little bit. Okay. So, hold on. So I'm sharpening his hair a little bit and his eyes. So that's kind of all I'm going to sharpen. Next I'm going to do, you know, his eyes are a little kind of on the gray side. I think I'm either going to make a curved layer. And I'm going to pump up those blues and the greens a little bit, I think. But definitely the blues a little bit, you know, just about there. And maybe the green just a teeny bit. That's too much. I think we're about there. Again, now, I'm going to fill the curve layer, the curve mask, I'm going to fill it with black so that it doesn't affect anything, and I'm going to paint in with white using my brush where I want the mask to actually work. So if you look at it, I'm painting in white into my layer, and it's filling in it's changing their eye color to blue, which is beautiful. You know, like now, see now his eyes are really popping. Okay, so now that I've got his eyes blue and I might add a little bit of pink to his, I'm going to add another curve layer. And this time I'm going to pump up the red a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little pink to his lips, just to make them a little pinker. Again, see how it affects the entire thing? Well, if I fill my mask with black using Command Delete, it masks everything out. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it in with white with my brush, and it's actually going to apply that curve. And I just wanted a little bit of pinkish in his mouth, just to bring that out just a little bit. See, I think that's looking pretty good. I think overall I'm going to use a little trick here, which is called a gradient map. And I like to use a black to white gradient map, which is a good way of turning it to black and white, but you know, there's other ways. And if I take that layer and put it on luminosity, I love the way it does it. It gives it like a little contrast and a little punch. So I really like the way that looks, so I tend to use it a lot. It's blowing out a little bit of its highlights in here, so I might have to go back and use a curve and darken the skin just a little bit. So I'm gonna do a little curve here that contrasts him up a little. It's too much. About there, I think. But I don't want it to affect. I kind of like the lighter background. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to add black to my mask so that it masks it all out, and then I'm going to take my white and I'm going to just apply it to his face so that I get that little bit of darker on him, a little more blacks on him, but not affecting the background. I think that's going to be good. I think that's looking pretty good. The next thing I want to do is, I wonder if it needs to be a little warmer. I don't really think so, but let me try it. I like to use a gradient map again. I have this preset, which is a very orange preset. Can use this one maybe. It's kind of a cool effect actually, like that, but I'm not actually going to use it like that. If I put it on overlay and I really lower the opacity to I just use it, like 4 or 5%, it just kind of warms things up a little bit. You have to be very careful because these things like 1% or 2%, and you really notice a difference. That's pretty good, I think. I think I'm going to go to 5%. I think it'll be okay. Yeah, and I think that's looking pretty good. Wondering, I don't really see anything else that I need to do. I think he's looking pretty nice. Eyes are popping. I guess the eyes could be a little lighter, but no, I kind of like them. They're popping. Maybe what I can do is that curve that I had made to darken him down a little bit, also darken the eyes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add black back into the eyes so that the eyes get lighter, but everything else stays darker. I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, see? So it darkened his skin, but not his eyes. I think he's looking pretty good. Kind of liking it. So now my final layer is always a noise layer. Sometimes, since I added some airbrushing, like you'll see in the background, like see how there's actual grain from the camera, but then some places where I added some airbrushing, there's no grain. It's just really smooth because the Photoshop is really smooth. So if you add a noise layer, what I do is I fill the whole thing up with gray, and if you hit Shift Delete, it brings up your fill dialog box, and I'm using 50% gray, so it fills the entire image with 50% gray, and you put that on overlay, right? So 50% gray on overlay completely disappears. Now, when you go to Filter, Add Noise, the noise will have different colors, or blacks and white noise pixels that will show up, even though the 50% gray won't show up. So, see how now there's noise on everything? Well, that's a little too much. I'm going to go to 3. But now there's noise on everything, so it brings it all together. It makes it all feel like it was one image, one shot. And I think I'm done, guys. I think that's going to be it. I think he looks great. I kind of like my crop. And I don't see anything else I need to do, so I hope they like it. I hope you guys like it. I hope you enjoyed it. I love doing these screen flows, and I will keep doing them. I hope you guys enjoy them. I feel like they've been getting, like the tools that I'm using for these, since they're mostly the same kind of retouching, becomes the same. But Photoshop is one of those pieces of software that you can use for everything, and there's so many elements to it that I think we can all learn from each other. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next week.